Pledge of allegiance. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Start off the meeting with anyone from the public who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item. Mr. Gaynor?
Hi, Mike Gaynor, 8 Cobbetts Lane. Sorry, I gotta grab my glasses. Getting old. Last week, I presented to the town board Wednesday at the town board work session in the public comments section. And my presentation dealt with 2 specific items. One, I wanted to bring it to the town's attention that I felt that the recent sale of my development rights on my property was being painted to the town by the Community Preservation Fund's bias against me. As part of that, I brought to your attention that I have recently reported to the Attorney General's office that the town coordinated with Sylvester Manor Educational Farm to deliberately avoid going through the New York State's requirement, of which they have a 32-page guide for reporting those transactions to the New York State Attorney General. That law was put in place to specifically preclude fraud from taking place. And so I thought that was very alarming. The other point of my...
You're accusing the town of something?
I'm not accusing it, I'm pointing it out as a point of fact. It absolutely happened. The town deliberately coordinated with Sylvester Manor Educational Farm. You have what's known as a duty of care, ma'am.
I read through that document that you read off with us, and there is no responsibility on a buyer of development rights to report to the Attorney General's office.
You have a duty of care here, ma'am. You have a duty of care, and your responsibility is to protect the public health and safety and our funds. Our funds moved out of our bank account and into their bank account. And I can't find what happened to it after that. Okay, so I will clarify those statements all day long, and I've clarified with the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General is taking this very seriously. Okay, so that's the purpose of my statement. The second part of my statement was to say that I was also reviewing how I was being handled by the Community Preservation Fund. And I told you that I was presenting a public-private partnership, right? Where if the town would consider moving past the way they've been treating me in the past, that I would take my offer, that's the exact same offer that I presented to the Community Preservation Fund, and I would lop on top of it a $250,000 donation, right, to the fire department if the town would move past their biases against me and do something good for the community, right? Protect those development rights, protect that view, and do something good for the fire department. I made that presentation, I walked out of here, and the moment I did, a member of the public, Bob Cohn, got up, violated all the rules of decorum, you did nothing to stop him, and he disparaged the veracity of my offering that my wife and I took very seriously. That's $250,000 that we plan on giving to the fire department. Not only did you not prevent him from doing that, both you and Margaret and Ben encouraged him and started laughing about that. And I'd like to know why that happened. Because I spoke with the fire department, they had a meeting last night, they didn't find anything funny about that offer. I've spoken with over a dozen members of this community, they didn't find anything funny about that offer. And I'm just trying to understand how you, a municipal officer, somebody that be elected, would lose your executive bearing and act like that in a public meeting. And so I'd like to understand why that happened.
My apologies too. I am sorry.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your apology.
Podium statement.
Thank you. Alexander Doman of 11 Rocky Point Farms. I'm just would like to make a few statements. I'm not looking for any responses. Just would like to make some statements for the public and for the town board that might be helpful. The first is, I think that there needs to be a better verification system in place to make sure that building plans that have been submitted for essentially a denial letter from the building department are the same building plans that go to the zoning board. Presently, we rely on honesty of the applicant to submit the same exact building plans to the zoning board that are attached to the denial letter. And it is reasonable for the zoning board, for the town board, when you address wetlands permits, to assume that the plans that you review are the plans that were reviewed by the building department examiner. Unfortunately, honesty does not, I don't think we can any longer assume that honesty prevails, because there's a certain situation on Nostrand Parkway where that does not happen. And a separate set of building plans, completely different than the initial set, are submitted with a denial letter that makes it look like it's the same set of plans, but in fact, it's entirely a different set of plans, such that when the board gives approval, they think that based on the denial letter, no variance is needed because the denial letter says it. So they issue a special permit and no variance, and the special permit gets issued, but on a completely different set of plans that is the responsibility to have first been reviewed at the building department. As the zoning board is appellate in nature, they shouldn't be de novo looking at a new set of plans, but in fact, this is what happens. Then that person can take that approval of the zoning board and go before the town board and ask for a wetlands permit. The town board believes that all the necessary approvals have been obtained, but not knowing that the building department never had a chance to pass judgment on whether a variance was ever needed because they never saw those plans. So then you get wetlands permits that can be issued that do not have the necessary approvals but have been sneaked in. But the problem that is apparent now is, what do you do about it? When the facts have come out and the boards have been duped by having phony set of plans that weren't reviewed by the building department before the approvals come down, what does the town board do about it? I'm commiserate with the position that the town board may be in when you're faced with a situation on ongoing construction. What do? I hope and I pray that the town board would open a hearing again and revisit the issue, because it's not fair for the town to be duped, and that means the public to be duped, because the town board represents the public. And now you have situations that construction goes on that everybody knows needs a variance. Everybody knows it. And what do you do about it? But watch and continue construction, because that's presently what goes on. And everybody looks the other way. And my impetus in coming forward today is to encourage you not to look the other way and to pursue justice. And justice means reopening a hearing. And if someone needs a variance, they should be asked to get a variance. And forgiveness should possibly apply after you have another hearing and an explanation is asked for. But you can't even ask for forgiveness if you don't have another hearing. That's point number one. Point number two has to do with, what do we do with code complaints at the town level? Because from my own experience, over multiple code complaints I have filed online as the system allows and never get a response. That's not right. A citizen that makes a code complaint deserves an answer. It doesn't deserve to have that code complaint thrown in the trash can. And that's what's happening. I assume everybody knows that the code complaints are handled by someone named Michael Chi, who is not part of the building department. So the people that are the real zoning enforcement officers within the building department aren't seeing the code complaints unless it's forwarded to them. And irrespective of that, the person that makes the complaint is not getting an answer. That's point number two. Point number three has to do with, I believe strongly
that when somebody makes an appeal before the zoning board, that they deserve to get an answer from the zoning board, one way or the other. And if that answer is, we don't want to give you a hearing, then that's okay. But what's happened, and from my own personal experience, I filed an appeal in January of 2022 that has been sitting for almost 2.5 years with no answer from the zoning board. And that's not right. You can't just stalemate an appeal forever. Something is not right there. And it's truly exasperating. It's not fair to file an appeal and not get an answer from the zoning board, one way or the other, even if that decision is not to give a hearing. So my plea is that this still pending appeal from January 22 gets an answer from the zoning board. I hope and I pray that. And I do hope, one last thing, and I don't, with all due respect to the town attorney, I think it's not right for the town attorney to write to the zoning board and tell them not to give Doman an answer. Because that's, Mr. Kelly sent an email, which he copied me, and said, don't answer Doman's appeal. And personally, I think the town attorney should be enforcing the responsibility of the zoning board to make proper decisions, not obstructing the responsibility of the zoning board. So that's point 3, and I honestly think that needs to be looked at. And I just want to emphasize there that the decision is not even to say whether your hearing is denied or your appeal is denied, but to have a decision from the zoning board. I think that's it. I think there may be one last one. The last point I would like to make is that with section 129 of the town code provides that when changes in plans are made, that you are required to go back before the town board and get an amendment to the wetlands permit. That provision of the town code is being completely ignored. The property that I know about, and there has to be many others, is you have a wetlands permit for a renovation of a house, albeit an extensive renovation, 85% renovation, that turns out to be a complete demolition. So it's not a renovation. They get a demolition permit, demolish the house, replace the foundation on a different footprint. And now it's 100% so-called renovation. So it's not a renovation, it's a new house. But you get a house becomes demolished. That's not what the wetlands permit provides for. It provided for a renovation of a partial structure. And everybody knows that the circumstances changed and no one's enforcing the requirement to go back and amend the wetlands permit. And my hope and a plea is that provision in the wetlands finally gets enforced, specifically with respect to a certain property going on Mount Strand Parkway. Honestly, I think I won't speak anymore. And I want you to know that I'm very appreciative of the opportunity to speak here. I'm not asking for a response or justification, but I'm making a public statement and really nothing more than that. Thank you all.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on non-agenda items? Anyone on Zoom? We will move on to item number 2, the dock legislation draft review. And we have as presenting WMAC Chair.
Hi, excuse me. I wasn't unmuted in time. It's Kim Noland. Can I still speak for just a minute?
Yes.
Okay, so I had a quick question. Where does one find the upcoming Monday night public hearing dates on the website? And could you just refresh how that happens in terms of setting the public hearing and then putting it on a certain date?
Can you just repeat that? Because my brain was going in one direction on the question, and then I think I was off.
It's okay, because I've had trouble trying to figure this out myself.
So are you looking for just the dates of all town board meetings, or you're
No,
looking when there's public
It's the
hearings?
it's the Monday night public hearings. I know that they happen, they're a certain distance apart. And
Yes.
it seems to me once a month.
It's every 3 weeks,
Oh.
sometimes 4, depending on how the calendar falls with holidays and other meetings. So last night we had a public meeting, and so we set a number of public hearings for the next meeting. So if you look at the archived minutes, you will see, you can look at when the minutes are posted. I'm not sure if they've been posted yet from last night. You can look to see which public hearings were set. And then Amber also puts them in the Shelter Island Reporter legal notice section.
Also on the homepage is the calendar, if you have it, you can see what meetings are on for that day.
Oh, so they are on the homepage of the website on the town calendar, because all I ever see there is like, a different yoga experience, or, maybe some
There's
nice.
a way, there's a way to just check off town board meetings or zoning board or planning board and unclick those. I've done that numerous times myself. I think it's finely stuck.
So, one final question. Thank you. This does elucidate. Wouldn't it just be possible I know that you're going to put it in the Shelter Island Reporter, and I know where it appears, and it's like pages of tiny print. Would it just be possible to put under the government page the next 2 upcoming public hearings and what is happening on those hearings, on those particular dates? Because where I'm getting is, right now, any discussion of things with, on your agendas that will be a topic of a public hearing essentially cannot be discussed in public without renting your own room, because you can't do it at town board, places. They can't be discussed until the night of the public hearing. And as much as people may hope to attend, and I think that you've done great in terms of, kind of making I know you care about what the public thinks, let me put it that way. As much as people might like to attend, they don't know when it's happening. They don't know where to find it on the website. They don't know when exactly. And lots of times they already have previously scheduled things that they might need to change and could change if they could get this advance notice that I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Because I think the effect of not letting people talk at the town board work sessions about the legislation that is being discussed that day is actually cutting off public discourse. And I know, the reasons behind it, because I understand the difficulty, and I really do think that, Amber, you really are doing a good job in a lot of ways. But I just think this would help everybody. I know there's one law that's going to be again discussed today, and my neighbors are very interested in it. And I'm probably not allowed to mention it, but it's this proportionality thing. It's really setting up a major zoning change for the island without calling it a zoning change. I've been vocal on this during the comprehensive plan hearings, and I just don't see any opportunity for people to really, understand that and see what's going on there. Okay, thank you again for letting me jump in here. I do appreciate your consideration. Thanks again.
And I will work on that website change. We'll definitely.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you. Okay.
Notify me.
Yeah, notify me is also a way to
It's all there, I'll call her and guide her.
Okay, thank you, Amber.
Yes. Okay, so we have Bill Garrity and Matt Williamson here in person to do the presentation from the Water Management Advisory Committee to present the dock legislation. And they have been working, you guys have been doing great. The entire committee, just the time and energy that you put into this is amazing. And thank you ahead of time. It's a big lift.
Well, yeah, thank you, and thanks for having Matt and I here today to provide a brief overview of the proposed Chapter 53 revisions. Hopefully, you've all had an opportunity to review what was distributed. If so, you've seen that there have been numerous revisions proposed. And given that, it's hard to anticipate exactly what questions you might have about the various revision changes. So if you have questions on specific points, please excuse us if we don't have an answer right at our fingertips. We will get you an answer in the near future. One item I would like to address up front, something that's not part of this proposed legislation, and that is fees. They've been a topic of a lot of conversation recently and some concern. I'd like to provide some clarification. There have been a number of different dock fees discussed in the past few months. The first were application and permit fees. And I just want to make it clear that it wasn't the WMAC who suggested or recommended dock and these permit and application fees. They came from the town board, and actually the WMAC had some concern and comments about those fees. And I think actually some were then changed as a result of our input. The second set of types of fees that have been discussed recently are inspection fees. The WMAC has agreed that it makes sense that docks be inspected at certain times to confirm their structural integrity. Those certain times are when a dock is being altered or modified or sold. And it would just be a one-time inspection that would be required. And if there's a fee to be charged for that, would be up to the town board to establish. Also, inspection fees were suggested for on a regular basis to establish for periodic inspections. That was not agreed upon by the WMAC, and it's not a part of this proposed legislation either. Third, there were annual site license fees suggested. Those annual fees were proposed to be in lieu of or even in addition to real estate tax assessments on properties improved by a dock. They also were not agreed upon by the WMAC and are not part of this proposed legislation. So therefore, there are no regular or periodic fees in this proposed legislation, just a possibility of a one-time fee in the event the dock requires inspection, and that fee would be up to the town board to implement. So on to what is in the code. Try to cover a few different topics here. Basically, take you back to the beginning. This started with our seeking a moratorium in order to revise the Dock Code Chapter 53. And that was done basically because of the vast increase of the number of dock applications over the last 5 years. 5 years ago, there were 8 dock applications. 5 years later, we got 18 dock applications. 13 of those 18 variances. So it became quite clear that the code was out of sync with the realities of the island's specific environment and the needs and wants of the community. This chapter 53, contained numerous amendments that were attached over the years, and oftentimes those amendments were in conflict with one another or with the original document and unclear and ambiguous. So we set out to clear up those items in order to make it a more easily understood and applicable document. We also addressed items that were often sources of variance requests in order to get ahead of that whole issue. One issue that has come up quite often is that of minimum depth. The DEC has a minimum depth requirement codified under New York Code of Rules and Regulations at Part 661 of 2.5 feet required for floating or fixed docks. We didn't have such a provision in our code, and oftentimes the DEC, for whatever reason, has not enforced the 2.5 foot depth requirement. It's an important issue For the environment, basically what happens at, below 2.5 feet or even at 2.5 feet, some areas require greater depth, some municipalities. But what happens is you get prop wash from the engine on the boat, and it tears up the bottom and tears up the vegetation that's there. Therefore, there's no longer vegetation to produce the oxygen that's necessary to keep a balance in the environment for the flora and fauna. It destroys the habitat for flora and fauna, and basically leaves the area subject to erosion. So that was implemented as part of the code, the 2.5 minimum requirement. Another item, we received numerous requests along the outside shoreline, and that's a new defined term in the code, this proposed code, for docks that exceeded the current 100-foot maximum length of a dock. So the way it's currently written is that dock can either go out to 100 feet or to 4 feet in depth, whichever occurs first. We established a length exception, and this is to provide relief in areas where someone goes out 100 feet and they do not reach 4 feet in depth. They can now go out to 125 feet in order to try to attain a 4-foot depth, provide more clearance for larger boats that need that deep draft. Another exception that we drafted is the pier line exception to provide relief in somewhat reoccurring situations. And this would come into effect where you have an applicant who is surrounded by longer non-conforming docks. And the applicant goes out the 100-foot distance that they're permitted to go, and they still have not reached 2.5-foot minimum depth. So in that instance, what we've done is permit the applicant to go out beyond 100 feet to a distance that is the average of all the surrounding docks lengths. So it gives them an opportunity to extend the dock and get to the point where they can actually install a dock and meet the minimum 2.5-foot depth requirement. We didn't consider this to be a navigational hazard, which you might run into when you extend docks out into the waterway, because the dock is already surrounded by longer docks. The other areas, as I mentioned, that we tried to address were to provide some greater clarification, remove some duplication, and provide greater explanation in the code. One example is former Section 53-13 entitled Responsibilities. There's also a former Section 53-9.1 Permit Issuance and Terms. The two provisions put in at different times were extremely duplicative. So I combined the two together and got rid of the duplication and produced a section that's now 53-10.1 entitled Permit Issuance Terms and Responsibilities. Another section, for Section 53-17, had no place in the code. It basically dealt with the non-conformity of water-related structures. There's nothing in the code that provides design criteria for water-related structures, so there's nothing for those plans to be out of conformance with. So it basically was dropped in during one of the last amendments to the code. It just had no purpose in the code, so we struck that out. Also, for greater explanation, clarification, we tweaked a few of the definitions in the code and added a few new definitions. Then on to Article 2, which is town-owned docks. This is probably the most revised and reviewed portion of the entire chapter. I had originally just cleaned up that section a bit, but because there is a new area, a new town dock area, Dickinson Creek, it required some additional work. And when I presented my markup to the committee. One of the members, Tom Field, who's a Bayman and represents the Bayman, indicated that he had a number of additions he wanted to make to that section of the code. So I worked with him, included all of those details, and what resulted was a rather lengthy and somewhat Byzantine document. Since the harbor master also keeps a boat at that location, Dixon Creek, I asked the harbor master to take a look at what I had done. And he basically did a complete rewrite and produced a good document. Basically what he did is he removed all of those specific rules and regulations that the Bayman had sought, in addition to other rules and regulations that were part of the original, and set them apart as separate rules and regulations to be maintained outside of the code. Probably kept maintained someplace like on the town website so people could look at them. And left the bones of that section in the code. And the purpose of that is really those rules and regulations are more subject to change over time. And in order to change those, we would not have to go through this whole legislative process. It makes much more flexibility, provides much more flexibility. So what's in this proposed legislation is the harbor master's rewrite of the code section, Article 2. And what was delivered was, in addition to that, are his separate rules and regulations, which basically include all of the detail that I had put into the original draft. And I also sent out my original draft just as for reference if Bateman or anyone else wants to refer to it in the future. And basically just because I didn't want to throw it out after doing all that work. The next item I want to cover is the unsuitable areas clause that we added to the code. That is now a defined term also in the code. It sets out 3 different geographic sections of the island's shoreline.
Where is that, Bill? Where is that?
It's in the definitions.
Oh, it's in the definitions under unsuitable. So it sets out 3 separate sections which I'll get into. We started this process with an observation sheet to be completed by each of the WMAC members. Matt had created a Shelter Island dock analysis atlas, which is basically a map of the entire island showing the outside shoreline. And that had 18 different reference locations located around the island. And we asked each member of the committee to indicate whether they considered one or more of 4 features to be an issue at any one of those locations on that atlas. And the 4 issues we asked they consider were depth, whether a location would be create an issue for the maintenance of a dock and a boat, exposure, whether wind and wave action would be considered an issue at a location, navigation and traffic, boat traffic, whether that would be an issue, and finally, public and pristine beach considerations for locations where docks might be put. Based on that review by all the members, there were 2 areas that were clearly observed to have issues due to exposure, and one that had an additional issue of depth. They've been described and defined as sections A and section C under unsuitable areas. Section A is comprised of 6 contiguous reference locations along the shoreline. They run from Hay Beach Point all the way down the coast to Real Point. 6 of the 6 members considered that area to be exposed, and a majority also considered depth to be an issue at that, along that coastline, portion of the coastline. Section C is comprised of 4 contiguous reference locations, and that runs from Shell Beach Point around the coast up to Jennings Point. 5 of the 6 members considered that to be an exposed area. The last section, B, is the entire coastline of what is currently Mashonack Preserve. All members agreed that that would be an unsuitable area to put a dock. The land is preserved, and also part of the code, the proposed code is that only land that is developed or may be developed under the town's codes can have a dock attached. That was, say, all the members. There was actually a member who felt that not preserved land, but privately held vacant land should still be able to put a dock. Basically, the majority went with that restriction. So with all that observation information, we set about to collect data to see what it said about our observations. And Matt has put together a couple of different maps which express all the data we collected from numerous sources. And I'll ask Matt to follow up with that.
So, just for the record, Matt Williamson, I'm the deputy chair of the WMAC. I have put together a couple of maps. I'm not sure if I see them on your desks. So I'm not in it now. I have no idea how to do that. There's not a way for you to put them up. They're the ones that I emailed.
I have those for you.
Yeah. It's the So as Bill was saying, we took a look at the island, and here this map is basically a representation. It's the island, and this is measurement of wind impact, wind-driven waves on sort of assessed at each individual lot. We took NOAA data on sort of wind regime. You can see that's in the inset there, that wind rose. That's the wind regime that, for I think Kabrisky Airport. Over the span of, I think, 20 years. And so that's just terms of where is the wind coming from, what are the strengths, and how much of the time. Each sort of individual colored portion of that chart is indication of percentage of the time that the wind is actually blowing at that speed from that direction. And so we took that information along with the individual locations around the island and the fetch from that island, from that location to wherever upwind is sort of where the wind, there's exposed water. So for each of 36 directions, there's actually basically assessing the exposure for each individual point. And that point is offshore of each individual. I picked a point that's sort of centered off of each individual lot around the island. And this is sort of the colors of those triangles at each individual location. It's basically a relative measure to give a check on the individual members' views about whether a place is exposed or not. As you can see along Peconic and along from Hay Beach out to Ram's Head, it seems it's significantly more exposed, for instance, than the internal areas around West Neck Bay or inside Cockles. But you can see sort of variation in those locations, again, primarily indicated or driven by where the prevailing wind is from. If you have any questions on this or how, I do have another slide. that could show if you want help.
The Shumwick is left off because it's off limits.
Yeah, I was up it off altogether. The other sort of general exposure we looked at was vessel-driven wakes. So that Christine, at the there's one that looks like that. And this is mapping of what's called AIS beacons. It's a program that commercial vessels above 65 feet and other sort of large vessels, if they so choose, have a beacon which actually shows their location, their speed at any given moment. So I think it's updated on every couple of minutes when they're underway. And so this isn't all the boats that are out there, but this is sort of a decent representation of larger boats. I just put them out there. It sort of shows sort of the general channels that boats are traveling in. One area, areas of concern that we were looking at were along the beach, because there are a lot of boats going past at pretty high speed. That location and close to the shore, and again over by Crab Creek, you can also see that, and then by down by South Ferry as well. I did make an attempt to try to translate some of this information, the speed of the boats, and the proximity to the shore, and actually see what sort of whether it could calculate sort of wave impacts on the shore. That was beyond my capabilities, so I stopped. But I did go into significant undertaking. I got pretty far, but and there is actually some Army Corps of Engineers document or programs to actually communicate with them about what would be appropriate. A couple of folks that also did a study of Tampa Bay and wakes, and I generally found that what's out there was not. They're like, well, what they do wasn't applicable here. So I decided it wasn't appropriate to go any further than that. But I did, it's somebody's out there. Theoretically, it's possible to calculate that out and figure out what are the actual waves that are impacting on any given portion of the shore. But I didn't go that far. But I thought this was a decent indication of what's out there. And there is information that in these beacons that actually shows the speed at any given moment and the direction the boat's going in. So there is more than this, but it becomes more difficult to interpret. So I decided to just leave this here, so that we did actually look at that.
I read this correctly. Since the traffic coming in the Compass Harbor, most of it is going to the mooring area next to Taylor's Island.
The Anchorage area.
Yeah.
Well, there would be a way to actually generate a directional element. I think I actually did somewhere you can actually do tracks. So this is like a representation. I think this is, we can contextualize it. It's a couple thousand sort of daily tracks of different boats. So you can actually do that. I wouldn't read too much into that because it's a beacon at a given time. So it's like, so there are a lot more, they're stationary or going slow. So it actually might be that there are just a lot more that are cruising through that area slowly. And so there could be a lot more beacons in that range of time. So I think it's generally accurate, but I wouldn't take it too far.
Okay.
If I may, most small boats don't have AIS, so it'd be the bigger ones. The blue water boats you see in Compass, and then AIS.
Yes.
Do the South Ferries have AIS? We do not. Because they don't show up on.
As I say, they don't show up on here.
Yeah, we kind of know where we're going. Pretty small boats.
Haven't gotten lost yet.
We watch out for the big pointy valves when we come through.
By the way, it's super helpful if you're sailing at night.
If you have any questions about how I did any of that or if it's or about the previous win.
I was gonna say, was there anything else that you wanted to present, Bill?
Basically,
Yes. Okay, go.
So my question was just, do you have a map of the areas that you deem unsuitable? Like the sections that you would like to,
The red.
it's just the red?
The bright red.
red triangles.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's two, basically those two areas that, stand out bright red on there. It's Shell Beach Point to Jennings Point, and
Right.
then flip side of the island from Hay Beach Point to Real Point.
Okay.
On the Hay Beach to Real Point, does that data includes depth?
Yeah.
And, okay.
Yeah, I mean, depth is an issue along that whole shoreline. On depth alone, you're really prevented from putting a dock almost anywhere over there.
In 30 years I've lived here, I've hit 2 rocks. There.
Not bad.
I tried to sit in on most of the WMAC meetings while this was being discussed, just so I would be up to speed. And I think one of the issues that just struck me as a hot button is just the definition of riparian rights, and some of that language got removed or modified. So if you could just address that, because there was rationale for it, so.
Yeah, there were some questions came up originally in one of the meetings. Why we changed the reference to riparian rights, and at that time I explained that all we did was put in the definition of riparian right into that portion of the code. Riparian rights are pretty interesting. They go all the way back to common law times. They do differ from inland to coastal. But basically, the reason why we changed it was to bring into conformance the definition that we have in Chapter 90 with Chapter 53. They're virtually identical now. Chapter 90, which is the moorings code, reads the right of an owner of waterfront property to reasonable access to navigable waterways. And the definition we have in Chapter 53 is the right of the right of the owner of upland property fronting on a body of water, reasonable access to navigable water. So I have no problem altering the definition one way or the other, and it's just, we're trying to bring the two into conformance, which is if you read enough of the various chapters of the town's codes, you'll find that different definitions from code chapter to code chapter go all over the place. It's hard to bring it into conformance. There was certainly no intent to change the legal impact of riparian rights.
Any other questions from the table? Again, want to thank, well, I guess next steps before thanking is what I'd like to do is have Bill and Stephen just get together to go through some of the legal wordsmithing that you think might need to be done for us. And then we should all take a look at it for next week to see if there's any issues as presented that we think need to be modified, addressed. So you can come back to us with an updated legal draft, but we will work with this draft to just come up with any key issues, concerns.
When that draft comes, we'll be able to open it up to the public to make comments.
No, that'll happen at the public hearing.
So it's at the end?
Go ahead.
No, we just disagree on that. I think to get a better piece of legislation, open it up to the public and let them give input. I really do. I think the WMAC has done a tremendous job, and I know you voted on things through the steps of the way. You got a consensus for this.
And there was public input during those sessions too. The public was there making recommendations. So it's been through that committee with input. People can also send us letters, meet with us individually to express concerns. I know of at least one person who's on my radar to come in for a meeting.
Happens all the time.
We agree to disagree. I just have to bring it up again. I just feel strongly about it as you do.
So Bill and I are going to be meeting June 20th, based on vacation schedules and things like that. So we already have it in the book.
Okay.
So just so you know, as far as planning, when Bill and I are going to meet. So I probably need like a week after that, or a couple days at least. Well, if we do it on the 20th, I can have it for that following Tuesday work session, a draft for you to review.
That time to let me just bring up my schedule. because the moratorium on this ends August 23rd.
23rd.
I was gonna say. The plan that I had currently was that we would set the public hearing on June 24th, have the public hearing on July 15th, adopt or reject on August 5th. So that begs the question of whether or not we need to go for another extension, if we think that there's going to be a lot of public input that will alter this and that we would need to redo this.
Is there enough time for an extension after?
Well, I was going to say we could hold off on whether or not an extension is needed. I mean, one person that I did speak to today was concerned about, you know, what areas were being shut down for not having docks in those areas. And when I explained it, they were like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So.
It's helpful for Steve and I to try to find an earlier date. I mean, whatever.
I didn't want to.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is public hearings are for the public to come forward and give us their input all at once, so we can address it, you know, collectively, the public and the board. And so I don't have a problem with if we reject legislation, because after a public hearing, we say we're going to sit down, redraft it, and then re-notice it, rehear it. My only concern in this situation is we've got the moratorium. Otherwise, I wouldn't care if we have a couple of public hearings.
Yeah, the Suffolk County Planning Commission was very receptive to the reasoning behind this moratorium and receptive to extensions. And if they see we're in the midst of, a public hearing on, and in the midst of, looking at actual legislation, I think they'll be fine with another short extension if needed. And,
We already missed the season for someone using a dock this year,
correct.
so.
Getting a bill. And I don't want to, and haste makes waste, so it's important legislation to rush it seems.
Yeah. I mean, does that make you feel more comfortable?
Yes,
I mean,
whatever.
that
I
we're
just,
going to, there will be ample time for the public to weigh in.
yeah, it's just, I think, any input, something will come to light that's a great idea, that's a great point. And then if we already go through the process of notifying it, schedule the hearing, and then we come to that, then we have to start all over again. That's all, and it avoids that.
But that's why, please, written comments on the existing draft, call me up, we'll meet with people, I'm sure you all will as well. That's why we're here.
And I know this is what you're about to go into, and this is your job, but as one of the liaisons of WMAC, I've actually watched this process, and been there for all the meetings, and the committee has done an amazing job. Hands down, simple as that. It is Herculean task, and it's really hard work, and you guys just bang through it. So,
Yeah, no,
Did a great job, honestly, yeah, great work.
Thank you.
All right, appreciate it.
So we'll let you two work out whatever works out with your vacation schedules, and just keep me apprised of that. But I think if we all pick this back up and just, if there's any comments we have on the existing draft, then if you're still meeting on the 20th, we can give
You can
you
have
those
our
comments to incorporate
Yeah, that'd be helpful.
over with Bill at that point in time. All right, so we'll keep this on for next week. And again, to Bill and Matt, we've got Mark, Al, and James all in attendance in person or on Zoom, and then Mom and Skylar couldn't make it today, but
Thank you.
I really appreciate
It was a
it.
lot of work, yes.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
So maybe you should, yes, to collect all my.
What's next?
Okay, so we have
Chief Reed.
hazard mitigation update. 5 minutes ahead of where I thought we would be. So hazard mitigation update, we've got, we're talking about Actually, I'll let you guys, we've got a PowerPoint presentation. We've got Chief Reed and Joe Fenora here.
And I'm going to take a little bit of a lead on this conversation and just as a kind of a reintroduction to one of the other hats that I wear for the town is that I am the emergency management coordinator for the town.
Sorry.
Yeah, they can
outside.
take us, yeah.
One of the things that you do each year is appoint me as the emergency management coordinator. In that role, for the most part, I sit here today. And also, with the advent of hurricane season, it started June 1st, the timeliness of some of this conversation is very good. So I really wanted to talk about what I would call 3 points today. Christina, if you don't mind just pulling that up. And try to stay as focused as I can on those points, because in this concept and topic, I can scatter and I think we probably could all scatter. So we want to look at, 3 points I really want to cover are evaluating the Ram Island causeways. I see there's some people in the room that are affiliated with the Ram Island Association, and that's important. I want to talk about a multi-purpose high water vehicle for EMS, and it would be our emergency medical service specific. And then the last thing I was going to talk about was our Notify Me, our town notification system. So first up, I just kind of want to talk about how I got here. I sit on a host of committees. We have a town hazard mitigation plan. That plan was formed in conjunction with Suffolk County and the other Suffolk County townships and the 5 East End towns. And what we do is annually review that plan. And in that plan, we identify areas that we consider are hazards to the community, and we try to address those hazards. And one of the topics, the causeways, is one of those hazards that we're looking to address. We also have a town comprehensive emergency management plan, and in that plan, we have a separate subdivision for our hurricane coastal storm plan. Sitting on the capital planning and grants committee, a lot of our funding comes from that as a source. We've had some real recent flood events to this year specifically that are going to highlight in some pictures, and some long-term flooding events that have impacted the regions that we're going to talk about. And then, as you know, in a small town, we meet all the time, whether we're meeting with the town engineer, the highway superintendent's here, other community stakeholders, whether they're on Bridge Street, Ram Island, Hay Beach, anywhere. We take input from them all the time, and we try to address their concerns as a township and as emergency planning. So that's kind of how I've gotten to where we are now. So Christina, if you can go to the next slide. So I just thrown up some pictures of some flood events. This is the first causeway, and then the lead up to the first causeway near Cobbett's Lane. One is a very recent event, just go back, and the other one, the one to the right is a little bit older, but you can get a sense of what happens down in that area. Go ahead, Christina. Councilman Dyer provided some pictures of the yacht club, and this is from, I believe, Benjamin, from the last storm, right?
Yeah, it was last storm.
The April event. And if you take a look at what's going on at the yacht club, you can imagine or play that out over some of our other roadways. Go ahead. Bridge Street, we've met as a town, the highway superintendent and I individually with representatives of Bridge Street and some members of the town board, and try to address some of the concerns down on Bridge Street. But you can see that Bridge Street has been recently, and in these two events, gone underwater. This is out on West Neck Road in the area of Harborview, Longview, Hilo, right in that area where if you look at these pictures where we've lost that section. Fortunately for us, there's a workaround. You can go all the way around through Brandon Parkway, Nostrand Parkway, Stearns Point Road, and work our way back to that. But this is another very vulnerable area for us during storms. Go ahead. And these are two older pictures. There was no intent, I didn't realize Cliff was gonna be here today. That South Ferry picture during Sandy, it will be relevant for later discussion. But that was a transport that we had during Hurricane Sandy. And then the other one from Sandy, that is the second causeway that was overwashed, and then overwashed with debris taken from Ron Jernick, who was running our payloader, trying to clear that back to the road surface during an event. And so Joe, why don't you go from here?
So, the priority areas or the target areas are those that you mostly saw in those photographs. The town had budgeted some money to address the Ram Island approaches, so primarily from Cobbetts Lane to the start of Ram Island Drive. And in reviewing the hazard mitigation plan, we've elected to expand that analysis and that project. So we're going to begin taking elevation readings and doing a full survey for all of the low-lying areas, beginning at Cobbetts Lane, effectively to Real Point. We're excluding the high elevation areas for the obvious reason that they're not at risk. But the purpose of this project is to recognize that that is a single point of entry and exit for both residents and for emergency vehicles. And so rather than allocate resources to that little stretch between Cobbetts Lane and Ram Island Drive, we're going to map and invest our resources in all of the low-lying areas with the intention of finding sort of that a sweet spot and efficiency of road raising versus maximum access. There may be some points where it doesn't make sense to go much higher because of constricted road shoulders or adjacent wetlands. And there may be other locations where we could gain access to a whole another subset of properties by simply going up a few inches or a foot with the road. So we're at the first phase right now where we're going to, in detail, with the land survey, map the full length of those low-lying areas of the road. And then we're going to analyze that data to pick that new design elevation, which would subsequently move to raise the roads to. So there are a number of constraints that we're working on that will ultimately limit how high we can go with these roads or where we can raise roads. And that's what this survey will help identify as well. Spots with wetlands. The causeways, for instance, are protected by Army Corps of Engineers designed and installed sheet pile wall. That's a major constraint for us to work around as well. But nonetheless, the survey will allow us to tie all of these pieces in together. And one of the primary goals of this particular study is to link in with the rest of emergency management's approach for a high water vehicle and for notifications to the public. Once we understand the precise elevation of all these roadways, we can tie that in with storm forecasting, so we can notify residents of a particular neighborhood if water elevations are expected to be above the road crown, or if water elevations are expected to be above our new high water vehicle capabilities. So we're trying to standardize our capabilities with what the known conditions are, so that we can better communicate with the public when we know we may have trouble accessing those areas, or when we know they may have trouble accessing those areas. So the chief's going to talk about sort of the next phase in terms of equipment acquisitions that are going to tie into this. But that's the concept of how we'd strengthen our emergency management response, both knowing what our capabilities are and then being able to communicate that to the public so they can plan accordingly.
Just before we go to the next slide, I take some ownership for this. On those two events that we highlighted earlier in the year, both of those caught us a little by surprise. I feel it's our due diligence as a municipality that has the capability to notify homeowners when we won't be able to get access to them. And both of those events were real close to us not being able to access Ram Island. Should we have had a medical emergency, especially, fire probably could have gotten through. So we want to do a better job in looking at how we deliver our service and being able to notify, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, notify residential areas of our community that based on weather predictions, we could lose a section of the causeway and might not be able to get to you. Please plan appropriately. whether that means leaving for a few hours during that time period if you have a medical condition that would warrant that, or some other reason that you may feel you have to go somewhere in that time period. So we have the capability with technology to do a better job of delivering that service, but we need the data. And that's where, we're relying on Joe and some of these topographical surveys to really take a look at that data. So if we know we're 3 feet low in a section of the causeway and we're gonna get a 3-foot surge, well, we're in trouble in that spot. Should we raise the road in that spot? Do we have a vehicle that can transverse that spot? And that's the kind of data that we're looking at. Joe, the next slide, Christina, he can talk about some of that area.
So this is really the scope of what we're looking at for the Ram Island project. The portion from Cobbetts Lane to Ram Island Drive was the original zone of study. And so now we've expanded it. It's officially broken up into 3 zones because of the segments for the elevation, but the red lines represent the total area of study. That's the lowest lying areas. And then based on how the data comes back, we'll look at road raising efforts in those specific zones so that we can work our way out as far as possible. One of the challenges is making sure that you raise the roads in the approach route. It doesn't make sense to raise roads that you can't get to because there's a vulnerability before that. So the purpose will be to work our way out as far as we can and try to access as many lots and areas where the population is concentrated as possible.
And financially, we have allocated, and this was in the 2024 budget, so it's not money we're asking for, it's money that's already allocated, the $60,000 to do this level of review. Correct, Joe?
That's right. And once we've established our goals and a plan for the road raising targets, we can presumably work some of that into our existing road paving budgets and projects. Road raising generally costs a lot more than just resurfacing, but that's sort of the concept of how we would address these over time, is to try and work them into roads that were maybe already slated to be serviced or resurfaced. And but certainly we would expect there to be subsequent budget requests to carry this out because of the extra and additional cost of raising elevations.
What's your plan to investigate available government grants for this work? Was that included in the $60,000 study? Because, this is sea level rise. There's gotta be a grant out there to help with this.
But Councilman Dow, we meet every 2 weeks with our grant writer, and she continuously is exploring grant opportunities. One of the things we found out about a lot of the FEMA grants is that they want plans in place. We have a shared grant that we've worked on with both North and South Ferry on looking at assisting them, looking at their operations and how to better provide a service during these same high tide events. So what they've come back with us each time is, you gotta present us with a plan if you want the money to do the work. So we felt, and through her, there was an opportunity for that, so we had to lay out the original engineering costs and some of the design work in order to get the grant. Once we have that, then the opportunities are more available. And please, Amber, speak, or Joe, speak to that if there's something out of that.
Summed it up.
So that's one of the, we're all financially conscious here. We want to get the best bang for our buck in the community, so we're always looking at grant opportunities in anything we do. So it is on our radar.
Great.
The highway superintendent's here. Did you have anything more, Kenny, on this portion of it?
No, I think you covered most of it. Those areas are the troubled spots. I agree with.
If you could come up closer, just so you're closer to the mics.
I agree with Chief Reed. We were just, we've been over this a number of times about the, these 2 storms that we had this year. I think they were like these sort of, we were planning on rain, we were planning on some flooding, and then it just, we got hit a little harder than we expected. But I think this is, I'm in agreement with this. We've all talked about it. I think this is a great plan. It's a great use of the funds. and, you know, could save us some money as far as, you know, raising roads significantly is a significant expense. And so if we can maybe do a combination of raising the roads enough with this emergency vehicle that the chief is going to speak about coming up here, I think it's a good use of funding and maybe save us a little bit of something down the road.
Thank you, Christina.
And just to repeat, the 60K is in the 2024 budget, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
We're actually utilizing ARPA money for this.
Okay. So the third part of my discussion, and this is for unfunded, but as a preamble to the 2025 capital budget, and is a temporary solution or a solution to provide emergency medical services to certain regions of the community when they're isolated due to flooding. And one of that is trying to purchase a high water vehicle, a high water transport vehicle. One of the ones we looked at was basically very similar to what you saw at the South Ferry, was a raised pickup truck. The truck could pass through 36 inches of standing water. It would have a fixed location for a stretcher in the rear. It would be a short transport vehicle, so that if there was a section of the second causeway that we couldn't get over, the ambulance might be waiting on Little Ram, and they would transport from Big Ram to Little Ram to an ambulance, and then that ambulance would take them to a hospital. The EMS has made a proposal to our capital planning committee for approximately $100,000 for this type of vehicle. And it would be a multi-purpose vehicle. It would be used in winter storms. We could use it for beach emergencies and other flood-prone areas. I think that the investment would be well worth it, even if it's for one person that's having a medical emergency, and it provides us that ability to get out there and get them to a waiting ambulance. So what I did was if you go to the next picture, just to give you a feel for it. It's really just a raised pickup truck. It's a 2500 series truck. This is just a prototype. EMS would be the one to spec this. It's going to reside with the ambulance fleet for service on special calls. But we would, coupled with the topography that the engineer is talking about and current projections of storm, we would know where our weak points are and can we get through that area of roadway should a certain storm come. So if we had a 3-foot rise above normal, how does that play out over a roadway surface? What can we do to respond? If we can't respond at all, we notify it. I'm going to get to that. If we can respond, we can respond with. So that is one of the concepts behind this vehicle. This will be presented in the 2025 budget cycle in September. It's being presented right now to the capital planning group. If the capital planning group feels that it's appropriate, that would be pushed forward to the town board ultimately for approval. I wanted to put it on the table as a solution in the short term as we look at this region and we address more flooding issues in our community. Any questions about that? Joe, anything I missed on that? And then the last part, and I can defer to Christina too, is that the town has recently, as everybody knows, we've gone to a new website, and in that new website, there's a section that has Notify Me. The police department, emergency services across the board are going to try to make better use of this notification service. If you can just go to the next slide, Christina. We currently have Code Red, which is a paid subscription that we have. It costs us about $1,500 a year. Our intent is to save that $1,500 and move towards Notify Me. And we would use this service to alert regions of our community or the entire community when something's going on. If you go to our town homepage, just go back one with Christina if you don't mind. Basically, you would log in, and when you log in, you locate the Notify Me. It's on the bottom portion of the screen, and you could sign up for whatever notifications that you want. I'm particularly interested in the next slide, which is community notifications, emergency notifications, and non-emergency notifications. If you want to be advised of when the next board meeting is, or I think somebody was mentioning yoga at the last thing, those kind of notifications, you don't have to subscribe to that. But we would ask at a minimal that you subscribe to the emergency notifications and the non-emergency notifications so that we can share with you what's going on. Recently, we had they were closing Chase Avenue in the Heights. We put out a non-emergency notification that based on what the Heights was sharing with us, the road would be closed. If South Ferry or North Ferry shared with us a temporary delay in service, we could use that as a notification to our community, especially if they're coming out from the city. So ferry service may be delayed because they hardly ever cancel. That may be delayed. Instead of a 1 hour wait, you may have a couple hour wait. So this portion, I'm gonna make a concerted effort over the next few months to really push out the emergency notification portions. And once I clear this group, I'm gonna try to meet with or get with the association groups, Red Island Association, Hay Beach Association, Silver Beach, maybe general community associations to say, look, can you get your community people to sign up? If nothing else, to at least sign up for the emergency notifications. The town is gonna do a better job at sharing information and trying to put it out. I'm really hard line on not overusing the emergency portion because you don't wanna get those notifications unless it's a real emergency. But we will do our best to monitor that. If we're getting feedback that it's overused, we'll change the way we deliver that. But it is important for our community to have a way that government relays information to them, especially in times of emergency. And we now have a platform to do that. Christina's gonna put on a website, a link or a PDF on how to sign up for it. It'll be greater detail than is provided here. But I really wanna make a concerted effort as a community and as a town to utilize Notify Me for emergency purposes. So that was the third part of what I wanted to cover today. Again, tying all three together is really important for us as we get issues that are flood related. We're seeing it more frequently. We need to, work on ways or methods to get over those. So we have a hazard mitigation plan. We're looking at roadways. West Neck Road is also another roadway in our hazard mitigation plan that we may look to elevate. In the meantime, till we get the chance to elevate roadways, we need a vehicle that can get us to emergencies. Not extreme, and there may be extreme emergencies that we can't get to, but general high water events that we need to be able to get through. And then the Notify Me ties the last thing in that we can alert our residents. So I'll open it up back to the board if there's any questions.
Any questions at the table?
I think so.
Who's doing the study? Jim,
That's gonna be done internally.
the grant, okay, you're doing it internally.
Yep, the only thing that the budget is really allocated for is the field work for the surveying and the elevation measurements.
Okay, all right.
So Joe, will we go out to bid on that? Is that a professional service?
That's a professional service and we would just solicit that work in accordance with the town's procurement procedures.
One of the things that I'd like to see from my emergency perspective is to have that roadway elevation from one end to the other so that we know exactly, based on a 3-foot tidal change, where our exact low points are gonna be and can we get through that? So our intent is to get a real working document that we can use to go forward with.
And how much, I'm sure you get into it, Joe, but how much is gonna be projected? I mean, there's a condition now, but a projected condition, and how far out will that go? Or is that too preliminary question?
We're not looking to make projections as to how high the water will go. We're trying to rather work from the opposite direction in understanding what our capabilities to respond will be. So rather than saying we think sea level rise will bring water to here, we're going to analyze this and say, we have the capability to respond if the water is 3 feet high, and use that in conjunction with our notifications and a current, incoming storm forecast to say whether we can or we cannot respond to those types of emergencies. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah. No, it's great. I mean, Ram Island's one way in and one way out. It's certainly a priority. As you said, West Neck Road, there is Nostrand Parkway to access other areas, but that is a critical place, Ram Island. Thanks, guys. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
It's a well thought out approach.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say in a case like Ram Island Drive, it's not really feasible or possible to raise the roads high enough so that you guarantee, dry passage every single time. And that's why the second portion of this with equipment that can function through water is important in making this an efficient project. To spend $100,000 on the vehicle to give you access in a situation that would otherwise require you to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to raise the road for that singular event is the much more efficient approach, so long as the community is comfortable, with that type of environment. And that seems to have been historically what happens anyway, so.
Is there anyone in the audience who has a question before we release Chief and Joe? On Zoom?
I just have to say thank you, Chief. Being proactive is really great, we appreciate it.
Mark Ween from the audience said thank you to Chief, so for those who couldn't hear it on Zoom.
And full disclosure, he lives on Ram Island.
Yes. Thank you very much, both of you. Okay, we will now move on to a few outdoor assembly permits. The first one is the Historical Society musical, and I do see Mary Fran Gleason is on to answer any questions that we may have. It is the annual musical. It's a fundraiser. A Deck of Fairy Tales is the name of the event this year. Expected maximum number of people on the property at one time is 200, collectively is 800, but I believe that's over 4 days. And the event setup date, July 15th, and the event will be the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 28th of July from 5 to 10 p.m. We have diagrams that show where everything's going to be located. Mary Pam, is there anything that you'd like to make a statement about?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, this would be our 4th musical, so we pretty much have the system down pat, if you will.
Mary Fran, is this the first year you've used a tent, or did you have a tent last year?
We did not use a tent last year. We've had tents on the premises before, but not for the play. And the only reason we are using the tent this year is because we had to cancel one performance last year due to a thunderstorm rain, and some people were not able to see the musical at all because they couldn't alter their ticket night. So we want to avoid doing that this year. The stage will be covered too with the tent.
And I should also note that they are requesting a noise exemption.
Right.
Yep.
So the little subcommittee reviewed the application, made sure it had all the correct bits and pieces. And it does, for the most part, our recommendations were that the building department check the tent and the stage before the performance. They have to get a permit for the tent anyway, and there's an inspection process. And we just want them to check out the stage as well and make sure it's well done.
Sure.
And then for parking, make sure that you've got people directing traffic, so that there are no bottlenecks in the road, things of that nature.
Are we technically, can I just ask a question? Or is the society technically allowed to direct traffic on 114? We direct traffic into the parking lot, but
Just-
not out in the road.
Right, into the parking lot, just,
Yeah,
monitor the parking lot and make sure that.
Yeah.
The same way you do for, the farmer's market
yep.
concept. And PD said that they would come by and if there were any issues, they would help you monitor the traffic.
That's great. Thank you.
Otherwise, we didn't have any concerns.
Anyone else?
No, I think it's great. Good
Any
event.
questions from the public? All right, then we will put this on for resolution on June 23rd.
Sounds good.
Right, Fran?
Thank you.
The next one is from the Recreation Department. And it is for the Music on the Beach series. This is something Tom Hastigan put this in along with Bethany.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't see either of them here, but again, subcommittee. So this is free music for the general public at Wade's Beach. Expected number of people is 200, automobiles is 70. The dates are,
3 events, right?
yes, July 24th, August 7th, and August 21st, from 3 to 8 p.m. They're requesting a noise exemption and some highway department services. And committee reviewed this.
Yes, so the committee looked this one over. Typically, a noise exemption is issued for charities, but because it's a town-sponsored event, we issue them a noise exemption. A highway typically would do a little additional garbage can removal, just checking things before, and extra cleaning of the bathrooms on the beach. And they're willing to do that. And then last year, what we did so that people who didn't have beach stickers could attend without getting ticketed is that the TCOs do stop early on those days. So 4 o'clock, he said, the TCOs would stop issuing parking tickets at Wade's Beach on those event days so that residents without a sticker could attend without a fine. And other than that, we didn't have any other requirements or recommendations.
Questions from the table? Anyone in the audience? Zoom? Okay, we will put this on for resolution on June 24th as well. The next outdoor assembly permit came from Sylvester Manor.
For this one, I am compelled to recuse myself. Those of you who don't know, I was on the board of Sylvester Manor for probably 12 years, maybe more. And I was president of the board of Sylvester Manor for probably 5 years. So I am at least emotionally involved.
So this was the annual farm to table fundraising benefit. We had, and it's due to be held on June 29th. And they were requesting a noise exemption, which is the only reason that they had to come to the town, because it's all self-enclosed. And we had decided to turn it down because of existing open violations with the town. Sylvester Manor requested to come in and appeal our thinking on that. So Stephen Searle is here to address this.
Okay, thank you. It will be very brief. I did just want to
let everybody know that we do feel like we are eligible for an exemption. We're obviously a not-for-profit. We are raising for the not-for-profit over $1,000. We've also received the exemption for all past events, farm to table. And lastly, I would just say I'm looking forward as well. This farm to table event is on the 29th of June, but I'm also thinking about a concert in August that we're going to have that I think we would also be eligible for. So I just want to make sure that we have this discussion now. You can choose one way or the other. You know, I know that we're going to continue to have this event anyway, but I would just appreciate at least a brief discussion and a possible reconsideration by the board. And again, you can decide, ultimately you can decide what you want here, but I just wanted to make sure that we were on the record that we feel like we are eligible for a noise exemption for this event and may be eligible in the future for a concert that we're going to have in August, at the end of August. I can, yes, any other questions, let me know.
I don't really
Think on it.
Yeah.
I was going to stand by the open violations, not approving.
We don't issue a building department.
Can the issues be separated, Stephen?
It's up to the board. There's no, this is really discretionary by the town board. There's no provisions on point in the code. So, you know, 33-3 issuance of a permit shall be issued only if the proposed activity is approved by the town board. Gives you some factors to consider, but those are really inapplicable here. So it's really up to you if you want to segment it or if.
Will you be taking a public comment before you decide, or?
Yes, this is not, this is something that's public comment eligible.
Thank you. Mike Gaynor, 8 Hobbits Lane. The first comment I would like to respond to was your commentary that they could have this without the noise exemption, this event. And I just wanted a clarification. It's helpful that Chief Reed is here. Do you mind if I can ask the chief a question?
I direct it to the town board.
Okay. So there's and Stephen and I discussed this yesterday, there's some language inside of the code and it says any event that would require town services. And so it sounds like from your interpretation of the code, you're stating that this event would not require town services. And I hold a strong averse opinion to that. It's the property, as you know, abuts my property and literally, I don't know how many, probably another 100 properties around the entire area. How many people are going to be in attendance according to their application? I know they've had as many as 300 in the past.
350.
350 people. So you're going to have 350 people who are going to be served unlimited alcohol throughout the evening, right? There's no lighting out there. They're going to be, it's going to be pitch black. It's going to take place inside of an old wood forest that's federally recognized, that's filled with felt wood, right? You've got it's going to all happen within the shadow of one of the most historical properties in the United States of America that has a history of burning down. That's not, that manor over there is Manor 2.0. It burned down once already. And so, Chief, does that sound to you like somebody that, wouldn't it make sense to have police, fire, emergency services there? You're gonna have 350 people drinking alcohol in the dark all evening. It would just seem to me to be reasonable that we would require them to have those services, wouldn't it? As opposed to calling Richie Serenzinski and everybody else at around 11 at night and saying, hey, you gotta run over, there's a fire over there. Somebody flicked a butt into the old wood forest and the place caught on fire. Wouldn't it make sense to have those services there in advance?
It's something to consider, and we'll have to consider that for every single outdoor assembly that comes before us.
I think that's reasonable. Thank you very much. And so The rest of my comments have to deal with, everybody knows I'm not happy with Sylvester Manor, and I'm principally not happy with Sylvester Manor's management team. The manor itself is just an entity, it's a thing. It's the management team that I have a problem with, and the management team has a long history of being bad corporate citizens inside of this community. And the code specifically in spirit references that. One of the items that the code requires for people to get these permits is to not have committed a felony. So by the spirit of the code is saying that this is not, this opportunity to get a permit for this isn't a right, it's a privilege, right? That we're gonna give to people, and we're gonna protect the public health and safety and make certain people who have these type of events are good corporate actors because they have the capacity to create all sorts of problems for the community, whether it's just general disruption or something actually incredibly unsafe. Those forest lights on fire, the manor building gets burnt down or whatever. And so I have documented here before that Sylvester Manor has done, knowingly and willfully done a bunch of things through their history that I think deem them bad corporate citizens, and they shouldn't be given the privilege of getting one of these special permits. I think they need to be punished like anybody else gets punished in this community. I think they deserve to be looked at in that way. And so I'll go through it very quickly. This will not take a second. In 2013, Sylvester Manor acknowledged with this town board back then that they were operating illegally. In order to operate back there, they needed a special permit. They knew that since 2013. The town board knew that since 2013. I've highlighted that, and everybody knows it. It's not up for dispute. Then they went on, and beginning in 2013, they've been having these farm-to-table events, as Stephen acknowledged earlier, as well as other events. The only thing that you're allowed to do in a AA zone is have a single-family residence or farm without special permission. That's it. All of these other things that they do over there, they are part and parcel of a not-for-profit corporation that's not allowed to exist there without a special permit. So every time they had an event and every time they continue to have an event, those are all functions. Look, that's not farming. That's not living inside a single-family residency. Those are all functions of a not-for-profit corporation that's only allowed to happen back there if they get a special permit. In 2015, they acquired the manor building itself, and they went out, they knew they were required to have a special permit to operate there, and they turned that single-family residence into their offices. Big sign there, offices, big screens all over the walls, desks, everything else. They did that. They knew what they were doing, and they broke a law again. Between 2015 and 2024, they knew they needed the special permit. They could have cured this problem at any point in time, just like Perlman Center is doing over there, a good corporate citizen. They could have came to the board, they could have filed for a special permit, they could have went through all the processes. This wouldn't have been a big deal had they been a good corporate citizen, but they didn't do it. They broke the law again. And all sorts of people who hold positions inside of this community, everybody from our town board member, Ben Diet, to people like Joanne Rabati, who sits on the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, to Kathleen Gerard, who sits on our Community Preservation Fund. These are all directors, officers inside of that company. They have a duty of care as well, just like you folks have a duty of care. They have a responsibility to make sure that they're following the law. In 2019, they went ahead and we did a transaction with them, commonly known as the Quaker Corner easement. As I've already explained, they purposely evaded the New York state law for that requirement that's designed to prevent people from committing fraudulent transactions. I gave you evidence of 4,000 transactions that have taken place inside of the state of New York. 4,000 attorneys knew that that had to take place. There's all sorts of knowledgeable people on Sylvester Manor. Everybody knew what the requirement was, and they purposely evaded it. Everybody, folks like Sam Seymour, who was the director over there for over a decade, the guy's a former federal prosecutor. How did he not know that that was a requirement? Lisa Combrick from Twin Latham, who represented the town, how did she not know that that was a requirement? Everybody evaded that, and specifically all the people at Sylvester Manor. In 2020, or rather in 2019, HBO came to this community and requested a permit. Public-private partnership. Once again, they offered $15,000 if they could film a film here for one night. The town ran them out of town and said, no, you're not going to be filming any permits in the middle of the summer because you're going to be interrupting everybody's evening inside of the community. Not 1 year later, Sylvester Manor Educational Farm, everybody knows that that happened. It was all over the paper. Jerry Siller made a big deal out of it. All this different stuff. They went out and they illegally filmed a film back there with Beyonce, okay? So they knew what they were doing. They illegally filmed back there. That was in 2020. Then in 2020, that same year, they solicited $30,000 off of me by waiving exactly what they're doing right now, raising funds for an illegal use. That is not legal. You can't go out and tell members of this community, we're going to do all these things when you don't have permission to do it. That's soliciting under false pretenses. It's a big deal, Amber. If you don't think it's a big deal, that's fine, but it is. So far, they've raised over $4 million from people inside of this community, and they're planning on raising another $9 million, according to their website, from people in this community for a use that's not going to get permitted. And I'll spare you the suspense. I'll get to the end of the story. I'm going to do everything in my power to make certain that they lose their ability to operate as a charity inside of the state of New York. And then I'm going to do that at the federal level with the Internal Revenue Service. And then they won't be getting any special permits until we see a change of management over there. As I explained to Stephen, I want to see a management team change. This current one's going out and we're going to get a new one in there that's acting responsibly, that's going to be a good corporate steward for that property because it's a valuable piece of American history. Go on. In 2022, they filed a false claim with the New York State, and they signed. I have a copy of the document.
I think you've made your point as to why we should turn down this.
I want to go. It's important for the community to understand.
But the purpose of this section is to whether or not we're going to change our minds on allowing the noise exception. So,
and part of that code,
I have a lot of other people coming in for different meetings in executive session. And so I do need to keep to a timetable.
I'm moving through it. I'm almost done. Trust me, it's a litany of things that they've broken the law, and I'm getting pretty darn close to the end.
Reminded us of previously.
In February 24, I uncovered that they were doing all this. In April of 24, they were cited by the town for operating illegally. On May 17th, they doubled down on the Shelter Island Reporter, and they basically said that Stephen Kiley, our town attorney, wasn't telling the truth. That in fact, they haven't broken the law, which is not true. Now they filed an application with the ZBA that's going up in front of the ZBA in July, and it's a false application. It does not extend and show all of the things that they plan on doing back there. And so for those reasons, these are not good corporate citizens. I do not think they should be encouraged to be raising money for a use that's not permitted back there. And they've broken the law a litany of times and they shouldn't get a permit. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Back to the table. Do you want to make it in this line?
Has there, to your knowledge, has there ever been any incidents, Jim, regarding the farm to table event?
Right, so we have had noise complaints back there. I'm not sure what event it was from, and we worked with them in trying to rectify those complaints.
I remember at one point it was over Gardner's Creek, yeah.
Over the creek, yep. So we listened from an adjoining neighbor who was complaining about an event. I'm not sure if it was the farm to table event.
It wasn't.
The concerts.
Regarding town services in general, and I'm not speaking to Sylvester Manor, in general, the town usually looks at, traffic control, use of the highway department, those kinds of things, not what could happen, but what services would actually be needed for an event when looking at the need for a permit. So if it was 350 people and they were parking on 114 and we had a assigned traffic control officer, that would need to come to the town for. So largely that's how the town in general, historically, without anything codified, has looked at town services and the need for town services.
Thank you.
So, to the question. I know you're an out. Oh,
One thing, sorry.
sure, come on up.
I did not be long and drawn out by any means, but I did just want to add that we are working with the town attorney to come into full compliance, obviously, with any and all zoning issues. Sylvester Manor is a very large property. There are obviously complications. We've known this for years. We've worked with past administrations for years. I would just think that is separate from this noise exemption, which is very specific to farm to table, which is happening on June 20th, obviously. I would just say that. And again, we've worked with Chief Reed for years on any and all events. And yes, we have had issues with neighbors in the past. We've done noise readings over Ms. Oakley's house. So, and we're happy to continue to try to work with neighbors. We're gonna have, just a reminder, probably 2 events this summer, which we would ask for noise exemptions. But we have other events throughout the summer, but those are really minor. They will not have amplification. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
You and I both saying no, I guess we wouldn't be able to overturn our previous decision. Okay. Next agenda item is the extension of the WQI grant to Cornell Cooperative Extension. We had received a letter from Kate Rossi Snook from Cornell Cooperative. The current agreement that we have with them, the contract period ends on July 31st, 2024, with a final report including monitoring data and recommendations for next steps due May 31st, 2024, which is actually, not sure why we wrote the contract that way since one precedes the actual contract in that period. So the request is they would like to extend their contract through from July 31st to October 31st, with the final report due November 29th, 2024. And I don't see a problem. Like, they're working with oyster reefs, eelgrass, working with nature, and need more time to just finish up what they're working on.
I don't see a problem.
Yeah, I don't have an issue.
No problem. They're not asking for more money, they're
No.
just trying to get the work done.
Exactly. So Stephen will have to pull that contract and just make the necessary modifications and bring it back for a resolution. So if we could do that before the end of July. Okay. It's back on track. Proportionality law. We had, I thought initially we were going to try and set the public hearing at yesterday's meeting, but we did not come to an agreement on which thresholds to use for the chart that would specify at what size acre or fraction thereof, what the square footage that would be allowed. Meg had something that started at 2,500 square feet at a quarter acre. I proposed something that started at 2,000 square feet on a quarter acre. Albert, you had the same, but then where we started to differ was the increments up and the different thresholds. So Meg had at 1 acre, 4,000 square feet. I had proposed 3,500 square feet. Actually, and Albert, you had proposed 3,000 square feet.
Yes.
And then we all ended at 3 acres, maxing at 6,000 square feet. But with different breakpoints. So we've got 3 proposals and we need 3 of us to decide which one was going to go into the draft legislation.
I feel that these smaller lots need to be protected more. The neighborhoods, the center, Montclair, the Heights, I think smaller lots need to be protected. Henceforth, my numbers.
Let me just, I had gone to the GIS and started clicking on property cards all over the place. And this was randomly, I know, Meg, you took a different approach where you were actually looking at what would fall into nonconformity for existing lots. On the smaller acres, I mean, the majority of the ones are in the Heights, and because of side and front yard setbacks, they almost always have to come to CPA.
Yeah.
So this would just be one more thing on that list. So I'm not sure if we're really
For the quarter acre or less, the majority of those are all Heights properties. So ZBA is par for the course for them. For the quarter acre to half acre, the largest majority of those are actually non-Heights properties, like 2/3 are non-Heights properties, actually more than that. So there's approximately 250 non-Heights properties, and then, let's see. $62 Heights properties.
Is it from a half to an acre?
This is from a quarter to a half.
Or 2.5?
And then from a half to 3/4, it's all non-Heights properties. Except for 12 Heights. So it's just the quarter acre or less that's significantly Heights related.
I remember correctly, the Heights supported this, or they okay with this? Didn't they chime in?
Yeah, they are in favor of,
The initial iteration.
yeah, but it was a larger draft a prior draft that had larger home sizes, so. And we will have a public hearing where the public can weigh in on how they feel on this. So I'd have to say your option is out, Meg, because I wasn't in favor of it, Albert wasn't in favor of it, so it's more, can we bring Albert towards my one? Where do you stand?
Are you B?
I'm in the middle one.
I like to see.
You like the most restrictive.
Yeah.
All right, so the differences were quarter acre, we both had 2,000. At half acre, we both had 2,500. At 1 acre, 3,500 square feet versus 3,000 square feet. And then at 1.5 acres, 4,500 square feet versus 4,000 square feet. 2 acres, 5,000 square feet versus 4,500. And then at 2.5 acres, 5,500 versus 5,200.
I mean, you go down Smith Street in your head and look at the small houses, and all of a sudden, if one is torn down, what can you build there? And how would it look? How would it affect the neighbors next door to them? I think those areas need to be protected. If you have the acreage, incrementally, I'm going up. But the small areas, I think, need to be held in check to help the surrounding neighbors, really, to be protective of them.
And I agree with Albert, and this is going to a public hearing, so we will hear from the public.
Yes, we will.
So.
Yes, yeah. All right, option 3 then.
No.
No?
I mean, option 3, like option 2 at least makes logical sense in its progression. Option 3, what's the justification for giving people 100 square feet if they're a quarter acre to a half acre, but then only giving them an additional 50 SFLA if they're a half acre to 1 acre, but then again, jumping up to an additional 100 SFLA if they're 1 acre to 1.5 acres, but then jumping back down to 50 SFLA if they're 1.5 acres to 2 acres, but then deciding at 2 acres that it's okay to have 75 SFLA additional all the way up to 3 acres. It just doesn't make sense.
Meg, I didn't, and I said that in my email, I didn't do incremental breakdowns. I just targeted certain quarter acre, half acre, acre and a half, 2 acres. I didn't target all the incremental increases. I don't know.
But you kind of have to break it down in this fashion if you're going to give it to like the ZBA to try to enforce.
Well, then I'll break it down.
We can't just
I will break
say-
it down and submit it then. That's fine.
But this is how you have to break it down to meet your benchmarks. I did it for you.
I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you have your benchmark of 3,000 SFLA at 1 acre, and then your next benchmark is 4,000 SFLA at 1.5 acre, that's a difference of 100 SFLA between each section there. So then when you go from 1.5 acres to 2 acres and your benchmarks are 4,000 and 4,500, then that's 50 SFLA between each one. And then it jumps up to 75. So you just have to justify why someone with, if you're going from 1/2 acre to 0.6 acres, they should only get 50 SFLA, whereas someone who's going from 1 acre to 1.05 acres gets 100. It just.
Well, I will go through it again and submit it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the next opportunity we have for setting a public hearing is June 24th, so.
Right.
We can come back, but I
mean, does
I see
that
what
make
you're saying.
sense?
Yeah,
Is
no,
that
no, you're
fair?
right,
I
'cause
mean,
for a
if
quarter
I were on the
yeah.
borderline, I'd be like, well, wait a minute, why do I only get 50 and they get 100 just 0.01?
I see it, yeah, it's 100 square feet, then it's 50
Yeah.
square feet, then it's 100 square feet, then it's 50 square feet.
And then it's 75
square
square
feet, so, yeah, I see what you're saying.
It's one thing if it's like a schedule of diminishing returns, where
Mhm.
you're starting at 100 and then it goes down to 50 and then it goes down to 25 and then, because that you can do based on, I mean, a typical floor area ratio does that,
Mhm.
but this doesn't have a method.
But that was the original, that's what we talked about. the last
My
time.
original proposal, yes,
So
but that's not
it
this,
didn't translate into this.
no.
All right.
It looks like Meds and Ambers in conformity with 100
With the diminishing return, yeah.
diminishes to 50 thereafter.
Mhm.
This one jumps back and forth.
I mean, it's
And then
easier
I'll
to,
make the numbers nice and neat and submit it, and then we can look at that.
Okay.
If it's a question of neat numbers, then I'll make them neat.
well, it has to be justifiable
Right.
and you have to.
The idea, again, is to protect the smaller properties, the smaller lots.
Mhm.
That's my intent. That's what I think is important.
Well, I mean,
And that's
you
the
do
whole point
that
of
with
this
option
legislation.
2 too. Like option 2 does that with slightly less nonconformity created.
Yeah, Albert, we can do it together.
Look, the only part where option 3 and option 2 have a difference is from 1/2 acre
To an acre,
to an acre.
but it does result in bigger numbers, but, yeah.
So, yeah, it's not. All right.
Yeah. But then it actually lets bigger properties get more. Okay, we'll revisit this next week. I want to keep moving here.
Just so you're aware, the change, as Albert requested, to make it applicable to B and B1, so I have made that change.
Yes.
So it's applicable to everything.
Yes. Did see that when we reviewed it. That's why all we were left with was
Yes.
this chart. Okay. Okay, Fresh Pond pilot project. Good, we are back on track.
Yeah.
Time-wise. Okay. Well, Joe had presented last time. We had talked about whether or not we wanted to apply for the grant, and you had, I was gonna say, you were the one most vocal about not going forward with this grant application.
Yes, Mike. The project, now that I've had to read a lot about this project, and certainly I spent the last week doing that, the project is a commendable project. It's actually really interesting and I like it, and I want to support it. But my problem is the way it was structured for funding. And first of all, thank you to the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association, everybody that supports them, because They really worked to address my concerns. They produced the information that I needed to get comfortable with this. And as they have all along, they've been working on this for 10 years and they're very engaged. And I appreciate that. It's actually a great example of public-private partnerships, which is what this has been up until this point. Its funding request shifted that a little bit. And I was interested and concerned about getting it back to that public-private partnership position. I think we've gotten there between the work we've done with the Fresh Pond neighbors and rewriting the resolution that we may or may not consider today. Thank you, Stephen, for your help, and Amber for your help. I wanted to, set a roadmap for not only this project, but for future projects, where when the funding priority is, something south of position number one, we want to give people an opportunity to get involved and engaged and help push a project forward. And I think we're ready to do that here. And what we were trying to do over the last few days is just get that clarified. And I think we've gotten there.
Question, do we have a hard cost for the pilot project?
Yes, 325,000.
And who's doing it?
That will have to go out. Joe, you are on. Do you want to speak to that? I know you went back this past week and sharpened your pencil. And the rough numbers originally had been 400,000. Last week we discussed 350, and then Joe's done some more work on it this week.
Yeah, we've been soliciting updated quotes from the respective equipment manufacturers, and we're resolute about applying for 325,000 in funding for this grant application if it was to move forward. So the 50% burden would be half of that 325,000.
Joe, forgive me for I just trying to educate myself. Have we put out RFPs for the work?
No, we cannot do that without the funding. Without the funding arranged. We can get quotes for the respective equipment, but we typically don't issue an RFP or put the project out to bid unless unless we have the funding.
How do we know what the cost is really? And I'm under the impression that the state wants a hard cost submitted to them to consider the grant.
So the cost estimate before you is what's developed by the designer. That's the engineer's estimate or opinion of cost. And that's typically what we do to make a grant application. To further that and to increase our confidence, we've requested quotes from potential equipment manufacturers, and they're shoring up our confidence. That's how we've landed on the 325.
Forgive me for questions, but frankly, you just brought this up last Tuesday, and presented this as the grant application has to go in this week. So I had lots of questions. That's all that I've asked. It was kind of sprung. I felt it was sprung here on us, or on me. I wasn't a part of it.
This is a project that's been underway since 2019. I was going back.
I know it's
And
been,
it's
but the
something-
hard numbers and the contract and the RFPs and the cost, I didn't have that information.
Yes, and
at all.
unfortunately,
And I wish Joe I wish he had come a month ago and started this process, not just a week before the grant's due.
yeah, we miss, we thought the deadline in my head was the end of June, and then realized it was June 7th was the deadline for applying for this grant. So that was a mistake made. Also, we had the week off on work sessions because of the Board of Assessment review being in here on that Tuesday. So we did have a 2-week gap in between meetings, but yes. Also, this has been a project over the years, starting in 2019, that has had town support. So kind of have to remind ourselves, this board is not, like, was not necessarily behind us, so we needed to.
I haven't been a part of this.
I mean,
Yeah, so
That's all.
that's a
I've really been
mistake.
here since January, and first time we really heard about a push on this was last week.
Yeah.
And I think we rose to the occasion, and, you know, I didn't
Yeah.
love spending most of my weekend worrying about this, but I did. And,
Yep.
and I hope we don't do that again.
Yeah.
But it's where we are, and it's what we have, and like I said, we made sausage over the weekend. And, you know, it wasn't pretty, and nobody's happy, which actually means we have a good deal on the
Exactly,
table.
exactly,
If everybody's upset about something, we have a good deal.
Yes, exactly. Mhm.
Because everyone wants to see Fresh Pond cleaned up, we really do. And my whole beef, I never had an issue with the value of the project, I just had an issue with the financial responsibility associated with moving ahead with the project. Because in the end, it's $1 million project. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about the money properly. And like I said, I've got to a place of being okay with it. For the pilot program, getting it started.
Yeah, so we would be applying for the county grant. If we receive the county grant, then we have 3 years to execute it. So we are also at the end of July, so we'll be seeing a similar resolution in July, maybe June, to apply for that grant, because that is part of our process. And that's something for the state grant.
Okay.
And so this was something that we did implement a number of years ago, because we never did want to get to a point where it's like, okay, we've applied for a grant, but how are we going to meet our match? And so it has raised the point that we wanted to raise in vetting these in this fashion.
So what is the specifics? We apply for the state grant in July.
Yes. And so if,
No, we apply for the state grant now.
no, this is the county grant.
Oh, sorry.
Is the county- in
So this is the
July.
county grant.
We have to have the DEC permit
Yes,
for that application.
yes. And the secra. We have to do a secra on it for the state as well. So we think that Joe, do you want to speak to your conversation recently with Fred Field's office?
Yes, they've indicated that the state's review of the permit is over and they're processing the permit now. That's a cue that they're going to ask us for the secret determination. That's the final step in the permit, that they won't issue a permit unless secret is complete. So their internal review is complete, and it would be to our benefit to start secret if we intend to apply for the state grant in July, so that this can all be done. So it's positive news from the state that their review of the permit is complete. And that makes me optimistic that we can achieve this in the grant application deadline.
You have anybody in the queue to do the secret review?
Well, we have PW Grosser as our independent consultant. Yeah, they do per diem work for us, so we can use them. Already contracted with them to do per diem work.
Do we have any kind of a price on that from them?
No, we can definitely ask for that.
And that decision is going to have to be made very soon.
Yes.
So who's going to do it and when?
I know Grosser's our retainer, but can we go out to other solicit other input, other reviews? Okay.
I'm just saying, for expediency, we already have one that's pretty willing and able to do that type of work, but you can always get other quotes.
And Stephen, is it correct that we're able to do this internally if we so chose, but we defer to outside secret review for, I suppose for the optics and for an arm's length review?
Yeah, so we'd be lead agency and we would, use our consultants, just because of their expertise.
And if for some reason we get bogged down on the state side, the county grant is
good for 3 years. So if we can't apply this year, we have 2 more years in which to apply. And the good news is we did apply for this grant for the whole project, the whole $1 million last year. And the state came back to us and said bifurcate this into pilot. And then the rest of it, I don't know what to call that part, the 2 through 10 year part. So we have done what they requested. The assumption would be that.
So we can put out an RFP for other environmental firms to look at a secret forest, just consider it.
You don't have to do a formal RFP.
That'll just take forever.
Yeah, you can reach out to other environmental outlets and ask for proposals.
Yeah, I think we should do that.
I have a name. Can I send it to you, Joe? And then we can all discuss it later.
Sure, yeah.
All right.
So if we pass this resolution at the special meeting today, then yes, then we can start moving forward on soliciting secret review, and we can review that next week.
All right.
Yeah, so I think we're well placed. So if we can get the county grant, then if we can put the state grant on top of it.
Yeah.
And if we don't get the county grant, but we get the state grant, our out-of-pocket would be $81,250. And in talking to Peter Grant, the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association has raised some money to put towards this project.
Absolutely. And they obviously have indicated their willingness to contribute help.
Yes, exactly.
Whatever it takes to move this forward.
It's my understanding that they have a fundraiser later this summer.
So.
Designated for.
I mean, if the decision today is to move forward and submit an application, I don't see why we shouldn't do that anymore. Because I no longer feel that the town is going to be left holding the financial bag, which was my problem.
Yeah. Any more from the table? Because this is a resolution, is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak on this topic? If you could come up and introduce yourself.
I'm Karen Whistagers. I'm not a Fresh Pond resident. I live on Silver Beach, 66 Peconic Avenue. But West Neck Harbor is right there. Fresh Pond is a treasure for the whole island. It's a public asset. It's not a private asset. And it was one of my children's favorite swimming holes when they were little, and it's true for many children in the island. It's one of our very rare freshwater resources on the island, the open body of freshwater that are essential for bird life, the osprey nest around there, for other wildlife, and the harmful products that seep out of there damage the creek window, West Neck Harbor, and ultimately contribute to the damage to our treasured Peconic Bay scallops. So glad you're sounding very positive, and I strongly urge you to support the grant application. Sounds like a well-researched and well-founded plan.
Is there anyone else in the fiscal audience? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak? Peter?
Yeah, hi, thanks. First, I just wanted to really strongly commend and thank Ben for working so hard on this. I know there's a lot of science and a lot of detail behind this project. We've been at it for a very, very long period of time. We strongly feel that it was important, and a number of people spoke up who are not Fresh Pond residents, including Karen just now, or residents of the immediate area surrounding Fresh Pond. It's been mentioned before, so I won't belabor it, but more than half of the membership of the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association does not live on Fresh Pond. Fresh Pond has a very dramatic impact on the creeks and bays. All of the water in Fresh Pond empties into Nanta Creek and Dickerson Creek 3/4 into Menantic Creek over the course of less than a year and a half, a year and a quarter. The project that we're talking about has been estimated to have the nitrogen reducing impact of 25 advanced septic systems. It's an estimate, so don't hold me to that. Let's say plus or minus 5 systems, but some and not just nitrogen reducing systems, those balanced phosphorus nitrogen reducing systems, it's the equivalent of those. So if I don't know what dollar value you want to attach per system, but it's north of 30K, maybe even 40K. So if 25, we're talking about $1 million worth of just septic system impact, the equivalent of installing advanced septic systems. The Fresh Pond Neighbors Association has, stood up time and time again. We've been contributing tens of thousands of dollars on an annual basis to this process. The WQI has also been very helpful and has contributed 6 figures to the process. The project in Menantic Creek as well, the WQI has been working with Menantic Creek Keepers Conservancy, and the two bodies of water are deeply related. We would be dramatically reducing nitrogen into Menantic Creek. So for all of those reasons, and in addition, this, frankly, though we like to say this is our pond, it's all of our pond. The town owns Fresh Pond, not us. And there's a very critical element here, which is that there's public health risk to harmful algal blooms. Fresh Pond is very beautiful, very seductive, and we suspect has caused health problems for people at various points. I myself might be one of those people. So we're very sensitive to that. There's I, as WAC chair, I'm aware that there are a series of interlinked concerns that go beyond just Fresh Pond. So anyway, we will do our part. I sent a letter to Ben and to the board members saying that we would be targeting raising half of any obligation that wound up. Again, as a WAC chair, I don't want the town holding the bag because we have a lot of priorities on the water quality front. So we're very solicitous of conserving WQI's money. But we would, and toward that end, we certainly would be fundraising, targeting, raising half of any obligation that the town itself might find itself with. Nevertheless, we are very optimistic and very hopeful that that will be zero. With 3 years worth of opportunities to apply for the state grants, if we do get this county grant, the odds really are in favor of there is zero cost to the town, and that would just be a tremendous outcome. So anyway, I think that it would be really wonderful if we can move forward in this time frame, which means the 7th is Friday. So in your special session, I hope that you're able to put the final touches on this.
Anyone else on Zoom? Oh,
I just want to check in and say
if you could state your name for the
okay,
record.
my name's Tom Janot. I live on 18 Worthy Way. I'm not a Fresh Pond neighbor, but I'm a part of the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association because, like a lot of the people in this room, we really believe in Fresh Pond. We've really used Fresh Pond. Our children have learned to swim in Fresh Pond. I'm just one of those people, and I just want to commend you guys for the work that you've done. So, appreciate it.
I guess the question is, before you're going, okay? The question really is, can we do two things at the same time? And that sounds like a question, but we want to clean up Fresh Pond. And at the same time, all the results, when we had the testing done in the center and we dealt with the sewer district, and we had all these red lines going into Menantic Creek, okay? We knew that the nitrate levels were affecting, or at least supposedly affecting this. The question I ask is, why do I guess I'm asking it, but I'm struggling with
why are we hesitating to take care of the municipal buildings that are putting out pollutants and really are affecting downstream, which are the people in Menantic Creek? Why can't we do two things at the same time? I understand this has nothing to do with preventing fresh pond, but we went through a whole study. We spent $200,000 putting a sewer treatment facility in, and
We didn't spend that much money.
well, it's $100,000, it's $50, whatever it is, the community got into it. So I guess the question is, if it all started over the municipal buildings, why can't we address it? That's what I'm asking the board to do. Let's not just deal with one little issue. I think we can address multiple issues at the same time. And obviously, good water, clean water, both for days or drinking water, are very important. So I would ask you to really take another look at tying in the municipal buildings into IA systems, okay, so we can really, really do a real good job cleaning up, not necessarily Fresh Pond and with all the effects on Menantic Creek, but the town building has a responsibility. I think we have a responsibility here in the center. Thank you.
We are working on that. We have $1,250,000 from the federal government, and that was designated for municipal wastewater. It's not as specific as the county grant that we are doing the rescinding on, because that one was very specific to one municipal wastewater treatment project. I've spoken to someone in Chuck Schumer's office, and I've spoken to Congressman Lota himself about pivoting so that we could do something with individual IA systems at the various town buildings. We just need to get permission to do that. Joe and I have started to work on cost on that. So we can do two things at once.
Amber, I think the school did, during that whole conversation, the school stepped up, they did their IA systems. We can already see the benefits of an IA system. All I'm saying to you, I think this should be a front and center thing in the center, that I think our town has a responsibility to clean up our own septics. It's one thing, I think Fresh Pond should be cleaned up, but I think it's not just Fresh Pond. If you saw that results in that reporting, where all these red lines were going into Menantic Creek. So why aren't we talking about that? That's what I'm asking for, and I know we say we're gonna do it, but if it's a serious issue and it's really important, we do it.
Just one other thing, in addition to what Amber just told everyone, I'm not sure how many people know about that, but we have also asked the WQI to confirm that funds from that committee would be available to pay for IA systems for some of the municipal buildings. So that the discussion is underway, it's just not all very much on the surface.
Then it's important, okay, this sewer district, Suffolk County Water really is a top item, it's water quality. I think there's a responsibility, it's been going on for a long time. The school did it, they made a big difference and made a change. We can do the same thing here. I'm saying, let's do it. If it's serious, okay, you'll find the money, because we always find the money to do things that we really want. So I think it's really important to take care of our own stuff. We are talking to tell people to put in their own IA systems, because you gotta do the responsible thing, and here we are as a municipality, we're not doing our thing. So I know we're talking about it, but I'm just saying enough of the talk, I think we really need to start acting. Thank you.
So come on up.
My name's Alice Ott, and I just want to say I live in Shorewood, but we always swam at Fresh Pond, and I see the value of all this work that they've done. I'm so glad you're going to move on this grant, because it was so foolish to let it go. So I want to thank you for the work you did over the weekend, the sausage you made, and I'm glad we're going to get a nice some benefit from it. So thank you.
Sausage and pepper heroes.
Now, Jake, come on up, Lisa, come on up. Can't see beyond the podium.
Lisa Shaw. Again, thank you for the work that you put in to get this moving ahead. And I'd just like to remind the board that West Neck Water District, a group of 64 customers. Created a water district, a municipal water district. Put in a main, electrical, 2 wells, actually 3 wells. We did all of this on our own over a 20-year period. Nobody paid for it. The town didn't pay, we did it. So, and we now have a $1.2 million burden on to upgrade the infrastructure, which we will pay. I'm saying this because I want you to remember community spirit and the fact that different communities do go up to the plate. They will rise and take care of their community. Just as Fresh Pond have sort of stated that they will take care of their community expenses. They'll do it. We do it. So there are different groups on the island that are committed to that spirit. And I think we need to keep that in sight. Does that make sense? Yes, thanks.
If there's no one else, we will. I asked the Zoom audience, that's when Peter had spoken up before. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is board member reports, but we do have an executive session with people coming in at 3:30. So what I'd like to do is recess the work session and move to the special meeting, convene the special meeting so that we can do this resolution as well as another last minute resolution that came in too late to get onto the yesterday's agenda. So, we need a motion to go into.
I make a motion that we go into a special meeting.
And Amber, you have something for us to sign? Okay, I'll resign it, never mind.
Thank you. Can I sign it in purple?
Okay, oh, perfect.
I just have the purple pen.
Would you like to read the first resolution?
Sure. Since I wrote half of it. Support submission of grant application to the Suffolk County Water Quality Protection and Restoration Program, Fresh Pond in Water Body Nutrient Control Pilot. Whereas the Suffolk County Water Quality Protection and Restoration Program, WQPRP, provides grant funding on a competitive basis for water quality projects defined in Article 12, Section 2B of the Suffolk County Charter. Whereas the town of Shelter Island has an interest in improving and protecting the water quality in the various water bodies of the town, including Fresh Pond. Whereas Fresh Pond, a town asset, is accessed by the public via an adjoining upland parcel, which was purchased with Community Preservation Fund monies, Turcom's Rest Preserve. Whereas the water quality of Fresh Pond has deteriorated due to excessive phosphorus levels, whereas the 20 property owners surrounding Fresh Pond have contributed financially in the past to try and address some of the water quality issues facing Fresh Pond, whereas the town of Shelter Island intends to submit a proposal to the Suffolk County WQPRP Review Committee to procure funds to improve the water quality of Fresh Pond, which review committee has established a deadline of June 7, 2024 for proposals. Whereas the proposed project will provide for pilot scale implementation of the Fresh Pond in Water Body Nutrient Control Project. Whereas the proposed project is designed in accordance with the New York State approved Fresh Pond in Water Body Nutrient Control Feasibility Study Engineering Report. Whereas the Suffolk County WQPRP program provides grant funding in support of selected projects and requires 50% matching share. Whereas the town of Shelter Island will submit a grant application to the WQPRP program for a maximum amount of $162,500 for an anticipated total project cost up to $325,000. Whereas the county grant is reimbursement based up to the grant award amount. Whereas the town of Shelter Island will explore other funding mechanisms to cover the project costs beyond the county grant. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town board of the town of Shelter Island hereby states its support of the Fresh Pond in-water body nutrient control pilot project. And be it further resolved that the town of Shelter Island will support the required minimum 50% matching funds towards the total project cost supported by the Suffolk County WQPRP should the project receive funding approval from the county up to $162,500. And be it further resolved that the town of Shelter Island shall seek other funding opportunities to cover the town's match, including from the state through the New York State Water Quality Improvement Program and/or a gift from the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association. And be it further resolved that ultimately the town of Shelter Island will be responsible for funding any project costs incurred above the county grant amount. And be it further resolved that the town board authorizes its supervisor and her designee to sign any and all necessary documents pertaining to the project, including but not limited to an intermunicipal agreement subject to review and approval of the town attorney to participate in the above referenced program. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Second resolution we have on the agenda is be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to execute the agreement between the town of Shelter Island and Suffolk County for the shopping assistance program for the elderly with the term of January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I just want to thank everybody who met with me this weekend and discussed this and helped come to terms that were acceptable for Benjamin. And it's really the first stage of a true remediation project for the pond. It's not just to improve water quality, but to actually reverse centuries of degradation due to just natural environmental decline. You know, you have a lot of organics that just naturally decompose. You have runoff that naturally collects. It's a body of water that isn't flushed. So this project would actually remove those toxins, those nutrients that are causing these blooms and reverse centuries of degradation. And so once the project comes to its full completion, then we will actually have a nice, truly fresh pond. So thank you.
Thank you.
You need a motion to close the special meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
We go back into the work session. The last item was board member reports, but last week, because our agenda went so long, we had to skip a meeting with outside counsel on litigation. So I would like to push off board member reports one more week. And so we can go into executive session to discuss acquisition of property and also litigation. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.